years, and we're taught to that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I think it's equal parts of always being a higher energy person, being very focused in my personality and in my work ethic, and beyond all those things, really loving what I do. There's the old saying that says, when you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly.
And
that's right.
This past Sunday on the show, someone asked, David, what are you most thankful for on air? And I said, I'm thankful for a job that that never feels like work. And so I think that's something that kind of keeps me going and keeps me energized. The nature of what we do at QVC is all live, so it's very energized at its core and by its definition. So the viewers keep me energized, the phone calls keep me up, the guests are exciting. The show is always changing, it's always live, and it's always fresh.
Well, it's very indicative of watching you every Sunday and every Wednesday night even, that, just how much you love what you do. And you're so incredibly knowledgeable about not only products, but food in general. And you're just a wealth of knowledge for people that are out there, like you were talking about earlier, that are really looking for answers on how to fix certain things or how to use certain products. And, it's just become such a staple. I think a lot of people just look forward to watching your show on Sundays because they know they're going to gain something from it besides, great QVC products, no doubt. Now, one thing I've always wondered is, what do you guys do with all the food? Because every Sunday I watch that show, I am going, oh, my, I wish I could just go through the TV right now and get
right?
that they're serving. And the reason why I always want to do that is because of the way that you taste food and you try food and I think, gosh, that food must be phenomenal because I've never seen you make a bad face. If you've ever tasted anything that was not good, we never knew it.
Well, you're sweet. You're sweet to say that. Yeah, it's a common question we get about all the food, and there is a tremendous amount of food that passes through our prep kitchen and onto air, onto the live set, and it's an extraordinary amount of food, and we're generating so much of it because, as you mentioned, the show airs twice a week, and that's a tremendous amount of food. The first thing I always say is that our crew eats incredibly well. None of them go to our QVC commissary on show night because they know they're going to eat very well backstage. So our crew eats incredibly well. For a time, we were working with some local food banks and trying to donate as much food as we could because clearly there was so much food there and much of it was cooked, and we wanted to be able to provide that to some local food banks. And after making donations over a period of a few weeks, they called and said, please stop, and we were surprised. And we were surprised by their reaction, and they said, you're incredibly generous, and we are trying to distribute as much of the food as you're sending us, but we don't have the storage capability to house all of these turkeys and hams and prime ribs and all the other things that look so lovely on the air, but they're all perishable. So it was one of those situations where they just didn't have the freezer or refrigerator space, and they weren't feeding folks 7 days a week. They were feeding folks a couple of days a week. So it turned into a situation where we overwhelmed them pretty quickly. And so sadly, we weren't able to give them as much as we would have liked, and some of the food ends up being discarded simply because it's perishable, and we don't have the storage capability for it. They didn't have the storage capability for it, but we do feed as many people as can eat on those show nights. Some of the food has been sitting under studio lights for a few hours, and so it's really not fit to eat after a show is over. So we're very careful to only consume the things that are safe. We donate what we can, and those things that can't be donated then get discarded. But it is a tremendous amount of food, and we make every effort to try to recycle as much food as possible. If we know a particular product's going to be back on the air again and we need a beauty plate, we have huge walk-in refrigerators and freezers at QVC, so we try to preserve and store as much of the food and reuse it as much as we can.
Well, one thing I want to say is I'm so glad I'm not seeing plastic food just for TV. I see that you're eating real food and giving us real reviews on it.
Well, I can tell you this. If you ever were backstage in our In the Kitchen with David and in our prep kitchen, you would be amazed at the organized chaos that is going on. At any time, we have 8 prep chefs and sous chefs and kitchen assistants and studio folks that are running in every direction, and tables are being rolled in every direction, and food is gorgeous and being tweaked and made to look beautiful, and it's extraordinary. I find that when I'm back there prepping a show, I'm many times dodging tables and people and food and cookies and prime rib, and it's just crazy. But it's a wonderful orchestration that ends up on air and just looks incredible, because we have a legion of people that are working backstage to make the show just look so incredible.
And I love when I see the cameraman or your producer or somebody or another host sneaking in there to try to get at some of that food. It's got to be hard being behind the scene and seeing all of it and knowing you have to wait.
It is very true. It is very true.
And I must tell you, the addition of Mary to the show, to be kind of the co-host at times, that she is so phenomenally, just so personable and just a great host on air. I love her personality and the way she interacts with the listeners, on social media and how she keeps everyone updated. She's just a great, addition.
Well, you're exactly right. Mary is my heart. I absolutely adore her. She is not only a coworker but a very, very close friend. And we have the moment I met Mary years ago, and I probably met her, when I say years ago, I make it sound like we've known each other since we were 4. I probably met Mary about 3 years ago, and she became a part of the show a little over a year ago. But the day I met her, I knew we would be lifelong friends. We have very, very similar personalities. We have very similar senses of humor. We click. And I have often said, she is the baby sister I never had. And so I adore her. And when we had an opportunity, she's long been a member of our team, but about a year ago we decided we wanted to really elevate our social media and have an opportunity to really engage the foodies in real time, live during the on-air show. So we went to Mary and said, what would you think about going on camera? She was horrified at the thought. She thought, oh, my goodness, I'm a producer of this show. I'm not an on-camera person. David, that's your job. This is crazy. And I said, but you are so funny and wonderful and personable. And I have to tell you, in team meetings, she can tell a joke, and we're all double over laughing for 20 minutes. I mean, she's just incredibly smart and funny and wonderful. So at any rate, we talked her into it, twisted her arm, and she has just taken to it like a duck to water. And it has just been so incredibly wonderful. And our foodies, our viewers, have embraced her just as you mentioned. They love her, and I couldn't be more thrilled because she is just this wonderful burst of energy and sunshine that makes our show even more fun and watchable. And I am thankful every day she found her way to QVC.
Yeah, and she is. You would never know that she was horrified at one point. She has just come alive. She comes alive when she's on the air, and she just looks like she's been doing this forever. So I'm so glad you guys got her in front of the camera, and she's out there assisting you every week because she's a lovely addition.
She is absolutely, and I will pass that along. She'll be thrilled to hear that.
Pam,
Oh, yeah, I was wondering what, I know that previous to QVC that you used to be doing a public affairs talk show. How did you go from one to the other? How did you get connected?
Well, it's interesting. I was doing a public affairs talk show while working at a TV station. I was in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I was at WTAJ TV10 in Altoona, PA, and was not only there to do that public affairs talk show, but I also anchored the midday news and was an anchor reporter and really went to college to study broadcast journalism and to do all those things. And it was interesting because when I was beginning to feel a little itchy in Altoona and wanted to do something more and kind of advance my career. I thought, well, where can I go? What can I do? And I began to thinking, well, David, what do you really love? What do you love about TV? And I said, well, I love when it's live. I love when it's unscripted. And I was always at my best in news when I was doing a live shot, when I was out, without a teleprompter, without a script. Mm-hmm. Those kinds of things, and I felt at the most at home in those situations, and so I began to think, well, what other television opportunities exist that would allow me to do just that? And my mom had always been a long-time viewer of QVC, and I remember one day after doing the midday news in Altoona, I was having my lunch at my desk, and we had to let you know at that time, the city of Altoona was pretty small, and only had an afternoon paper. We didn't even have a morning paper, and So I was reading the afternoon paper, and there was a feature article on QVC and how quickly they were growing. And I was thinking to myself, well, you know what? This is that channel Mom always watches. I wonder what it takes to be a host there. So I called, and they said, well, you know, you'll need to send a tape and a headshot. Well, at that point, I was so broke I couldn't afford to pay attention.
Aww.
And so it was one of those things where I had to wait 2 pay periods just to save up some extra money to get some photos taken. So I got a tape together and got some photos taken and sent them, and they called almost immediately and said, we'd love for you to come audition. I thought, okay, well, big mouth, now you've gone and applied, and now you've got to go and show up and do what they've asked you to do. So I had to show up with an item of my choosing so that I could do an audition, and I was to appear about 30 minutes before my audition, and they would have another item of their choosing that I would have a chance to review and then present. And so I brought a little collectible Santa Claus figurine with me, and I knew a lot about the person that had made it and sculpted it and that kind of thing. So I did all my homework there. And when I got there, the piece that they wanted me to sell was a piece of jewelry. I knew nothing about jewelry.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And I was immediately, I was like, okay, you're in over your head. You have gone above your station. You're in trouble. And so, but they had a piece of paper there, and they said, answer these questions about this item. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What might you wear it with? And to whom would you give it as a gift? And then suddenly I realized, well, that's not so hard. I can certainly describe this, and I can certainly talk about jewelry in general and talk about to whom you give it as a gift. That seemed okay with me. So I did my item, and I felt very comfortable about that. And then I did their item, and then all the heads in the room started nodding at me. And then I thought, well, I must have done something right. And then the man who would become my boss stood up and he said, well, David, it's clear you've been on TV before, and this was a great job. Let me give you something you haven't prepped. And he walked across the room and picked up an old beat-up travel alarm clock. And he walked back across the room and he popped it in front of me and he said, think about that for 30 seconds and sell that to us. And I thought, oh, boy. Now we're back to that. Now we're back to the beginning thinking, oh, you faked your way through into this far, but I don't know how you're going to be able to get through this. But then I began to think, what is a travel alarm clock? Why do you have it? Why do you want it? And why is it important? So I remember just kind of collecting my thoughts and looking into the camera and said, how many times have you been traveling and you were worried that either the front desk wouldn't call you for your wake-up call or the old beat-up travel alarm or the old beat-up clock radio in your hotel room wouldn't go off on time? And then suddenly it was a straight problem solution, and it worked. So, getting back to your original question, I kind of deviated from the question.
Okay.
How do you come from that to this? What I began to realize is that what I was doing in news was not so uncommon or different from what I would do at QVC. In news, I would go out and cover a news story. I'd be peppered with lots and lots of information. It was my job to pick out the most important parts and retell it in a conversational way. The same thing is true at QVC. They give me a product. The vendor will give me lots and lots of information. I'll pick out the most important parts and retell it in a conversational way. So then suddenly it didn't seem so different. Then suddenly it didn't seem so completely opposite. And what I began to understand more than even any of those things, it was just connecting with the viewer on a very personal level, letting them get to know me and really kind of meeting them where they live and putting products in their life. And then that ended up being very important.
Of which I have bought many of the products that you have sold.
I know,
on
right?
Sundays and been saved. And I'll share this story. I bought the KitchenAid big stand mixer a year ago, and the first time I used it, I was like, how did I survive baking beforehand without this mixer? So, you have successfully done your job, and you've done it very well, because I have many products in my house. My kids, well, when I have the show on Sundays, they're like, Mom, what are you buying? So, they know I'm in trouble if I'm watching you on Sundays, because you're going to sell me something. So you do a great job, Dave. And so it's just, it's always great to see you on Sundays and Wednesdays, and just your personality has come through in so many ways. And you just keep us all entertained as well as informed, and it's just a wonderful thing that you do. We have one caller on hold. Do you want to take the call before we have to wrap up?
That would be great.
Okay, just a moment, please. All right, area code 413. You're on with David-Venable.
Hello?
Hello?
Caller?
Yes, you're on with David-Venable. Go ahead, please. Oh, I'm sorry, David. They apparently were calling in to listen and didn't realize they had been put on hold or been put on live air. So one thing I want to ask you before we do wrap up is, what are some good tips that you have for, Thanksgiving's in 2 days, and I know this time of year everybody starts getting really, they're